You break a bone today. You go to a hospital. Someone puts you under. Someone stitches you up. You go home in a cast. Now take away the hospital. Take away the anesthesia. Take away the antibiotics. You're sick. 9,000 years ago. No pharmacy. No 911. No germ theory. Just you, your tribe, and whatever they could figure out with bone, fire, and plants. And here's the part that should shock you. They didn't just survive it. In some cases, they handled it better than doctors did 200 years ago. Let's start small. A toothache. In a Neolithic graveyard in Pakistan, archaeologists found something that didn't make sense at first: nearly perfect, symmetrical holes drilled into the back molars of 9 different people, dating between 7,500 and 9,000 years old. That's dentistry 4,000 years before anyone thought dentistry existed, and 9,000 years before anesthesia. The tool wasn't even designed for teeth. It was a bow drill, the same tool used to carve beads out of stone. Someone looked at their bead-making kit and thought, this could probably work on a tooth. And here's the detail that gets skipped every time this comes up: the holes show signs of healing. That means the patient didn't die on the table. They didn't die of infection. They lived long enough for bone and tissue to remodel around the hole. Somebody sat still, in agony, while another person drilled into their jaw with rock, and they walked away from it. That's not a footnote. That's the birth of a medical specialty, performed with a tool meant for jewelry. Now let's go bigger. Let's go to the skull itself. The procedure is called trepanation, cutting or scraping a hole directly into someone's head, and it's one of the oldest surgeries on Earth. Sounds like a death sentence. Here's the twist: it usually wasn't. During the Inca Empire, between 1400 and 1500 AD, skull surgery had a survival rate of roughly 75 to 83%. Now compare that to the American Civil War. Same surgery, different continent, 400 years later, with metal instruments and formal medical schools. Survival rate, 46 to 56%. Read that again. Stone Age surgeons, using rock tools, outperformed 19th century doctors with steel scalpels. And how do we even know this? Because the bone itself keeps score. When a patient died on the table, the bone around the hole shows zero reaction. When they survived a few weeks, you see early bone activity. When they survived for years, the bone fully remodels and smooths over. A skull isn't just a skull. It's a receipt. It tells you, down to the week, how long that person lived after their surgery. And some people didn't just survive one operation. One skull found in Iron Age Switzerland shows 2 separate trepanation holes, done at different times, using 2 different techniques. This person survived surgery, healed, and came back for a second round later in life. So why did some ancient surgeons succeed while others killed their patients? It comes down to one decision, and it's not the one you'd expect. Across completely unconnected cultures, Peru, Switzerland, Britain, one pattern shows up again and again. Surgeons who scraped survived their patients longer than surgeons who drilled or cut aggressively. Why? Drilling risks punching straight through into the membrane surrounding the brain. One wrong push, and infection sets in. Scraping is slower, but it lets the surgeon feel exactly how close they are, layer by layer. This wasn't luck. This was trial and error, refined over centuries, passed down without a single medical textbook. And it wasn't just superstition either. The Hippocratic Corpus, actual ancient Greek medical writing, recommends trepanation after a skull fracture for a very specific reason: to stop pus from building up and infecting the brain's lining. That's not a ritual. That's infection control, written down over 2,000 years ago. Now let's zoom out from surgery to something people don't expect: a toe. Roughly 3,000 years ago in Egypt, a priest's daughter lost her big toe, likely to disease. What she got in return is now called the Cairo toe, a wood and leather prosthetic, jointed at the base, built to move like a real toe. Here's what makes it remarkable. It wasn't made once and forgotten. It was refitted to her foot multiple times over the years. Someone kept adjusting it as her body changed. That's not a burial decoration. That's a product being maintained for a living person. And it gets better. Centuries later, the Romans built their own prosthetic, the capua leg, cast in solid bronze, heavy, rigid, no joints. Modern biomechanical testing suggests the wooden Egyptian toe, built centuries earlier with simpler tools, actually restored more natural walking movement than the Roman bronze leg that came after it. Ancient Egyptians even knew the difference between fake for the afterlife and real for walking. Mummies have been found with painted-on eyes, fake noses, symbolic body parts meant only to complete the body for burial, crude, static, never meant to function. The Cairo toe isn't in that category. It bends. It shows wear. It was rebuilt to fit a changing foot. Somebody, 3,000 years ago, was doing prosthetic fittings. Here's the detail that gets cut from every ancient medicine was amazing video. Successful trepanation didn't mean a full recovery in the way we imagine it. Surgeons never replaced the piece of skull they removed. They just cleaned the wound and let skin heal directly over the gap. Which means even the lucky ones, the 75 to 83% who survived, walked around for the rest of their lives with a permanent hole in their head, partially filled with new bone, never fully closed. Survival wasn't the same as a cure. It was a trade. You lived with the evidence of what almost killed you sitting under your scalp for the rest of your life. So what did ancient humans do when someone got sick? They didn't have hospitals. They didn't have antibiotics. They didn't even have a working theory of what disease actually was. What they had was observation, centuries of it, passed down, refined, tested on real people, written into bone. A bow drill borrowed from jewelry making. A scraping technique perfected through trial and error. A wooden toe, rebuilt by hand, again and again, for one woman's changing foot. We like to imagine ancient medicine as guesswork, superstition, magic. But the bones tell a different story. They tell us people were paying close attention, and getting good at keeping each other alive, long before anyone wrote a single word of medical theory down. The real question isn't how they survived without modern medicine. It's how much of what we call modern medicine was actually invented first by them.